now to leaders' questions, and I'm taking leaders' questions under Standing Order 36. And again, I'd ask for your cooperation in keeping the time limits. Dohety.
In response to the shameful practice of institutional investors or cuckoo funds buying up family homes in bulk and pushing ordinary home buyers out of the market, you chose to introduce an inadequate increase in stamp duty in respect of houses. But not alone did you fail to tackle the issue in relation to houses, you decided to take no action whatsoever in relation to apartments. And it's important for us to remember that half of all homes built in Dublin last year were apartments, and in Dublin City it was 6 out of every 7 homes were apartments in the city. The vast majority of these homes are being snapped up by funds, and they don't even pay a single cent of tax on their rental income. In fact, if you look at one of them last year, they made $75 million in rental income and they paid no tax whatsoever. And your government has taken no action in relation to this, and it is little wonder that their share price increased following the government's announcement last month. Clearly, your message to those who want to buy a home that is affordable is, sorry, not on our watch, because you are actively facilitating a free-for-all for these institutional funds. And it wasn't just Sinn Féin who've been calling this out and saying that your measures that you were taking were inadequate. There were others who did likewise, not least senior officials within the Department of Finance. And through freedom of information, we can now see clearly that in early May, your government was warned that by having no extra stamp duty on bulk purchases of apartments, you potentially drive the individual purchaser out of the market due to the lack of availability. That is what you were told by your own government officials. Yet you proceeded to ignore their advice, and you proceeded with a policy that you know will not address the issue in respect of apartments. And let me spell it out to you, Taoiseach. Apartments are homes just like houses. And people want to live in these homes, and people want to live in our cities. And they shouldn't be forced to fork out unaffordable rents into perpetuity to do so. The policy choice that you and your government have made says to workers in this and families that this government is on the side of the funds, is on the side of the developers, is on the side of the banks and not yours. And that is the reality. Yesterday we see other evidence of this, where it was reported that 398 homes across 3 locations in this city, in Santry, in Finglas and Clongriffin, were snapped up by these funds. Not one of these homes, not one of them will come onto the market for first-time buyers. Not one of them has to pay the increased stamp duty. So I am asking you, Taoiseach, why did your Minister for Finance ignore the warnings from his own department officials that the decision that you took in relation to apartments would continue to see first-time buyers blocked and locked out of the market? And will you, for once and for all, end the sweetheart tax deals that these funds enjoy? Because we need to stop these funds snapping up homes, apartments and houses that should and must go to ordinary workers and families. And further to this, Taoiseach, just a couple of weeks ago, the Dáil was told by the Taoiseach, and he said emphatically, and I quote him, that the message should go out loud and clear, that no local authority should be on the other side of this, engaging in long lease with these institutional investors. But we have learned just this morning that the Minister for Finance intends to do exactly the opposite, and he intends to exempt these funds from paying the higher stamp duty if they lease these houses back to the local authorities. So how the hell can this stand, and how can this be facilitated, given the Taoiseach's comments in the Dáil just a couple of weeks ago?
Thanks very much, Deputy. I think first of all it's important once again to be aware of the facts. We know from the most recent statistics produced that about 10% of new homes in Ireland were built by investment funds. Actually 20%, or sorry, were bought by investment funds. Actually 20% were bought by the state, by local authorities and affordable housing bodies. And I said before, we need to take that into account too. That first-time buyers and people who want to upgrade or downsize aren't just competing sometimes with investment funds, they're actually competing with the state. In fact, they're more likely to be competing with the state than they are with investment funds, and we need to bear that in mind too. But it is 10% in the last year gone by. It's going to be less. Why is it going to be less this year and in future years? Because of the action that we have taken. And the action that we took was to impose stamp duty, a very high stamp duty rate, on any fund that buys more than 10 houses anywhere in Ireland in the year. They can't buy 10 in every estate, 10 anywhere in Ireland in any 1 year. And we believe that will significantly reduce or eliminate the practice of investment funds buying up new houses. We took a decision, as we explained at the time, not to apply that to apartments. We took that decision having taken advice widely and having heard from builders in particular who build apartments who have said to us very clearly that if you do this, you will see reduced supply, that they simply are not in a position to build these apartments if they don't have the assurance of a forward buyer. They can't get the finance to build in those circumstances. And as we said at the time, this is something we will keep under review. If we have to alter that policy, we're open to doing that. But we don't want to do anything that is counterproductive, that only results in fewer apartments being built. And if fewer apartments are built, well, that's less places for people to rent, and therefore rents go up for everyone else. And that's something that we want to avoid, obviously. And by the way, I totally agree with something you said earlier. I agree that apartments are homes too. I live in an apartment, Deputy. I've been living in an apartment for 14 years. I know that apartments are homes too. It might be the case that around the world, including in Ireland, the vast majority of people in apartments are renting, but there are those of us who are owner-occupiers as well, and I happen to be one of them, which is why I was surprised to hear Senator Boylan on 2 occasions refer to people who live in apartments as transients. Transients. Those of us who live in apartments, Deputy, are not transients. She shouldn't have said that. Perhaps she didn't mean it. She should withdraw it. I'm pretty sure that if anyone in Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael referred to apartment livers as transients, we would have been attacked and savaged online. She's Sinn Féin, she got away with it. But I hope you don't stand over that remark, and I hope you'll address it in your reply. What we're doing as a government is we're trying to help. We're in a housing crisis, but we're trying to help. We're trying to help renters, and you'll know the decision that we took, a change of policy, but a necessary change of policy, the decision that we took in the last few days to link rents to the consumer price index, to inflation, so that people who are now renting won't see their rent increase by any more than the rate of inflation, probably 1%, 2%, maybe even less in the coming years. And we'll leave that in place until rents are falling and rents become more affordable again. And we're helping home buyers as well, helping home buyers particularly to the Help to Buy scheme. Tens of thousands of people have been helped to get their deposit through the Help to Buy scheme, something your party has consistently opposed.
Dohety.
Taoiseach, you need to get real. You live in this city. You should understand what is happening. 6 out of 7 homes in this city are apartments. 95% of them have been bought up by institutional funds. They're able to do that because you and your government and your time as Taoiseach introduced sweetheart deals that the sky-high rents of $2,500 that they charge ordinary hard-pressed families go tax-free. That's why they're able to do it. And you have now exempted them from the higher level of stamp duty, despite the most senior official in the department who was charged with drafting this legislation saying that you potentially drive the individual purchaser out of the market due to the lack of availability. So this is eyes wide open stuff, Taoiseach. You and your party are deliberately locking out individuals from home ownership in relation to apartments. So the opportunity that you had will not be available to people in Dublin at this point in time because the investors are snapping them up. I give another example of 3 sites across Dublin, 400 homes, not one of them coming on the market, and you will see more and more and more of that. And to make things worse, in terms of houses, you're going to bring in an exemption that will allow for these funds to snap up entire houses and to rent them back to local authorities, which the Taoiseach rightly says is terrible value for money and shouldn't be happening. So square this for me. Otherwise, the only reason I can have and understand is you are in the pocket of the investment funds and you will continue to put their interests above the interests of homeowners.
Continue to go over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy. And that's incredible. I want to apologise to you for having to endure that display, for you having to ring your bell, for you being shouted over and shouted down by Deputy Doherty again. And you say to me that I need to get real. Well, Deputy, you need to calm down, this constant display every Thursday of aggression, of nastiness, of fury and anger. It's all pre-planned. It's all just done for your social media video that you're going to put out in a few minutes' time or an hour's time. And everyone knows it, Deputy. You know, let's have a rational, grown-up conversation about housing policy, about what the right things are to do and the wrong things are to do. And we've displayed the fact that on a number of occasions as a government that we've been willing to change our policy where we think it needs to be changed. That's why we changed the law in relation to stamp duty to stop investment funds buying up houses and housing estates in the way they were. It's why we're now changing the law to bring in rent controls so that people living in rent pressure zones will see their rent increases linked to CPI. Let's have a grown-up conversation about policy. Let's talk about the pros and cons. Let's not have this display of histrionics and anxiety every Thursday. It's just done for social media. You don't really care.
Tánaiste, you're over time. Just, Tánaiste, you're over time. I don't need an apology. It's the rough and tumble of politics, and I would just ask you to cooperate. I would ask all TDs to cooperate.